Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. I am not in Phoenix. I am in LA for about 24 hours in between the Lakers game in Las Vegas and tomorrow's game in San Francisco. So I'm able to go live quicker than usual, but I'm bearing the lead here. The Lakers won 128-122 over the Phoenix Suns in overtime. Dalton Knecht, after I just did a mailbag about his shooting slump to start the preseason, and I said to not overreact and to not worry about Dalton Knecht, and he's going to be fine, and just give him some time. Well, he needed a few hours because he dropped 35 points tonight, a career night for him. Obviously, it's just the preseason, but including scoring 20 straight at one point in between the fourth quarter and overtime. He hit the game-tying three at the end of the fourth quarter, with the Lakers running this like wide receiver play where everyone's running their routes, and it confused Phoenix into Dalton Knecht hitting a three over Bull, and then he just went crazy, was shooting flames out of his ass during overtime, and just was like that. So anyone questioning or worrying about Dalton, I just please look at this game tape. And JJ Redick already talked about, like he said, he was in the top 1% of shooters. Tonight, he was in the top 1%, just period. This was a special performance, and I don't expect him to shoot like this, obviously, during the course of the regular season. But any night that the Lakers can get this type of performance from him, or something even 70-80% of this, those are going to be the nights that he helps swing a game off the bench. So a very encouraging performance from Dalton Knecht. And I see the chat starting already. Thank you. This is from Bamboo Shoot. Thank you for the 16 teams that didn't pick Dalton Knecht. So yeah, I mean, teams are going to regret passing on Dalton, I think, based on what we've seen in Summer League, what we saw tonight, and what we are likely going to see this season. So you guys know the drill. Before we get started with three takeaways from tonight's game and then into the Q&A, for those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not yet done so. Turn on channel notifications and like and comment on this stream. And then for those later listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. All right, so let's get into the three takeaways from tonight. Gonna bounce around the box score a little bit. I have to start with Dalton. And the takeaway number one is just Dalton is that dude. This was the reason why the Lakers drafted him. And again, this might be the best performance he has all season. 35 points is a lot for anybody, especially on a team with LeBron and AD. You rarely see those types of performances from D'Lo and Austin Reeves. So like this is that type of night for Dalton. And again, it's the preseason. He was going up against Phoenix's second, third string guys. So like the typical caveats apply, but to score 35 points and do so on 10 for 18 shooting, can't see the box score here. One sec. He was 8 for 13 on threes, 7 for 8 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds. So he also continues to be active on the glass. I thought he competed well defensively. Lakers put him on KD for stretches of this game. And I also should have mentioned that no LeBron, no Rui for the Lakers in this game. So they end up starting Max Christie and Cam Reddish. And this was supposed to be a dress rehearsal game for the Lakers. JJ Redick had said earlier in the week that he was looking at this game as the type of game where the Lakers would go more with a regular rotation and kind of a pre-regular season type, locking into your opponent in terms of game strategy and just your rotation and your lineups. That ended up not happening because no LeBron, no Rui, and then Gabe Vincent, Austin, and Max were all on minutes restrictions. Neither player played more than 22 minutes. So the Lakers were being a bit cautious, and JJ said pregame that sometimes, things don't go the way you want them to go in the NBA. That's just part of sports. So for him, he had wanted this to be more of a dress rehearsal. That's not how it ended up playing out. But you got this supernova game from Dalton Knecht, and he's not one to lack confidence. We were talking about it with him in Las Vegas about his shot and just sort of how he's learning on the fly as a rookie, and he's maintained confidence and he's maintained like, I'm just going to go out there, play my game, take shots when I'm open, try to make the right play, and that's what he did tonight. And I think even more so, like he had a pretty quiet start to this game. I believe it was like late in the third quarter. He had like 8 points, so he was not forcing it. I thought, if anything, he was playing more within the Lakers system and just moving the ball and kind of just taking the shots that were there and not forcing shots, maybe the way that he had earlier in the preseason. But when the Lakers sent D'Lo to the bench and AD to the bench, and they'd already started resting Austin and Max and Gabe, Dalton just went off, and it was this weird lineup of him and JHS and Bronny and Jackson and Armel Traore. And I want to it's going to be lost in this game because Dalton went off offensively, but Armel Traore had a couple of big blocks, a couple of big stops that I feel like need to go at least be acknowledged, where Armel Traore was making some big plays defensively. But I see a couple super chats. I will get to those. And first one from GLPE15. We're not going to have to wait 4 to 6 weeks. Yes, we are not going to have to wait 4 to 6 weeks to reevaluate Dalton Knecht and give him some grace to see what type of player he's going to be. He's going to be fine. It took, again, 4 to 6 hours. It was really less than that. And then Shabujin, at what point do we start the JHS discussion? I'm not going to have the JHS discussion right now, but it is worth starting. At some point, I will. When I start the Q&A section, I'll circle back to that. So with Dalton, again, like 35 points, he actually was tied for the lead. AD had 35 points, so that's gonna be another takeaway I'm gonna hit on. But with Dalton, 2 steals, 2 blocks. I think defensively, like, I liked that the Lakers were challenging him going up against Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and he was getting burned, but he was also, it was trial by fire, right? And I thought that he was at least competing on that end. And we've seen that from Dalton, where I think his level of competition on the defensive end compared to where it was even as recently as Summer League, to me, it's night and day comparing his defense now to Summer League. And yes, he's still a defensive liability. Yes, guys can blow by him on the perimeter. Yes, teams are going to target him, and that's something that he's going to have to figure out, and that the Lakers are going to have to figure out, especially if he continues to shoot like this and earns a certain spot in the rotation and maybe plays his way into a bigger role. But if he's scoring like this, he's got, like, I think the Lakers will live with teams occasionally scoring on him. So I will go back to that super chat once I start the Q&A process. But again, Dalton, to me, has shown a lot of progress on both ends of the floor. I thought today he was a bit more selective, and then that allowed him to be a bit more aggressive once it was him with a lot of like the third string guys. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to say other than I don't like who else on this team could do something like that. You know, I would say LeBron and I would say D'Lo. I don't think Austin 8 threes is a lot, so it's probably just those two. But like even it's probably really more so D'Lo in terms of like just going on a heater like that. Like that was an incredible heater. And I know preseason, all the caveats, but like Dalton is a special shooter. He can get hot, and I think this was just a reminder of why the Lakers drafted him, why they're so high on him, and his potential role this season of he can be this microwave scorer. And when I had Pete Zayas on Laker Film Room, his bold prediction was in the second half of the season after the All-Star break, Dalton Knecht was going to be top 5 in bench scoring. And nights like this show you that potential of this dude can get hot. And he was hitting some tough shots. It wasn't just like he was playing against the Suns' third string guys and they were leaving him open. Like he was hitting contested threes off the catch, off the dribble, and it was really difficult plays. And then also he would put the ball on the ground if they overplayed. He wasn't just forcing shots. He did pass the teammates and put the ball on the ground, attack the rim, got to the free throw line a few times. So like I thought for him it was a really just almost like. I don't want to say coming out party because I think people already knew what he could do, but it was just more so a reminder of like, this is why the Lakers are so high on him. This is why JJ's called him a top 1% shooter, is that there aren't many players in the league that could have a shooting performance like this. even with, again, the preseason caveats, the competition caveats, all that stuff, like there just aren't many guys who can shoot like Dalton Knecht. So I think that was like the biggest picture, most positive takeaway for the Lakers was Dalton having this type of breakout reminder performance. And I think, hopefully for him and for the Lakers, he can carry that into the regular season. Now, the second thing I wanted to touch on was Anthony Davis and his jump shot. So he goes 4 for 9 on threes, hit all 4 of them, I believe, in the first quarter, had 15 first quarter points, ends up playing 34 minutes, which I was a bit surprised by. That to me, like there were some elements of a dress rehearsal here. AD playing 34 minutes, D'Lo playing 31, Cam Reddish playing 30, given who was out and some of the minutes restrictions for the other guys. Felt like the Lakers approach, like D'Lo and AD played into the fourth quarter, which was really the first time they've played like regular. It was the first time they played their starters into the fourth quarter. First time they've really played regular guys outside of Dalton into the fourth quarter. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe Rui and D'Lo got a shift, if I'm not mistaken, maybe in one of the games. But really, for the most part, the Lakers have been like by the middle to end of the third quarter, they've just been emptying the bench and going with third and fourth string guys. And that was not the case tonight. Like they ultimately did that like midway through the fourth, but up until that point, AD was in, Cam was in, D'Lo was in, etc. So I thought, but with AD, like the jumper, it's. I think of the first matchup against Phoenix, and he hits that 3 early in the game, and I believe that's the only 3 he's hit. He might have hit one more since then, but like he's been taking threes. He's not necessarily been making them, and that's something that we've seen over the last few years now. Is just AD, he might take 1 or 2 threes a game, but he's not shooting them at a high clip. And tonight might be an outlier, so I don't want to overreact, but 4 for 9 and hitting 4 threes early. And to me, it's always with AD, like the way he's shooting and just the confidence. And like sometimes he'll catch a swing pass and the defender will be 8-10 feet off of him, and he's looking to find the next player is looking to swing the ball, and then he kind of looks at the defender. It's like, okay, I have this space, let me just take the 3. Like tonight, it was all just I'm letting it fly, and the second I have an opening, I'm not looking to pass it. I'm not looking for a DHO. I'm just going to take the shot, and the fluidity and the rhythm that he caught early, that to me is something that, again, I don't want to overreact and say that AD is going to be a high 30s 3-point shooter, but if he can get back to being like 33 to 35% and do so on like modest volume, that's a plus for the Lakers offense. And that does change the way that teams have to guard him. And you can kind of see them, like you could play more big, 2 big lineups in that case, but it also just the LeBron AD 2-man game, the AD Austin 2-man game, the AD D'Lo 2-man game, all those things become a little bit trickier if you now have the threat of AD popping out and being a legit threat beyond the arc. So that was something for me that like 35 points. I mean, this is a good matchup for him. Similar to Golden State, he has a size advantage against basically anyone Phoenix throws at him. Yusuf Nurkic is too slow to defend him, though sometimes he can bother him with his size. If Kevin Durant gets switched onto him or any of the other Suns wing defenders or just smaller guys, like he's just too big for them, and this is a team that he has a lot of success against. So this is certainly a good matchup for AD, and that's partly why he had 35. But I thought the jumper and just the rhythm, the fluidity, LA really ran a lot of the early offense through AD, and he looked really comfortable and really good doing it. So I think that's the second thing for me of just AD looking much more comfortable operating the offense and also shooting and making threes, and just his jumper looked a lot better tonight. And just one night, one data point to file away. But I think if AD can continue to shoot better and just more confidently, that has a trickle down effect with the rest of the offense. And then final thing for me was we got a Jarred Vanderbilt update. So this is the third and final takeaway. Jarred Vanderbilt is going to miss at least the next 2 weeks. JJ Redick said pregame that the Lakers will have or are aiming to have an update. Those aren't the exact words, I'm paraphrasing, but he did not concretely say there's going to be an update in 2 weeks. He said like the plan is to try and have an update in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks puts Vando out through the rest of October. And again, he's not saying he's returning in 2 weeks. He's saying they plan to have an update in 2 weeks. So I said that the second that we got the Vando update, I was skeptical that he was going to play by opening night, especially after we talked to him and it felt like this was going to be something that went into November. That's the way that this is basically trending, right? Like I think on the early side, it's like the first week of November, but potentially longer than that. And that's really the way that the Lakers injuries have trended over the past few years. So that was the one, like certainly like Lakers got a much needed win in the preseason. They're now 2-3. Dalton went off, AD went off from the perimeter, and those were two positives. But the negative is Jarred Vanderbilt, it seems like, is going to miss at least the first couple weeks of the season, if not a little bit longer. And JJ was talking about having a long-term view with it and really prioritizing the full season and Vando's health and trying to get him ready for later in the season. So this could be something that goes into mid to late November, potentially, depending on how things develop. So that was the one piece of bad news from this game. It was just, I mean, the Lakers really need Vando. I think it showed tonight that if they're down LeBron and Rui, all of a sudden you're relying on Cam Reddish. And Cam, I thought, competed on the glass and had some good defensive moments, but he also went 0 for 4 on threes, and just the Suns were not guarding him out there. 2 for 6 overall for him. So I think it's a big loss, right? So the Lakers just don't have another wing defender that can do what Vando could do, unless it's AD doing some of those things. But that's got to be in two big lineups. So I've been skeptical of the Vando return and just the uncertainty with it. I think tonight just confirmed a lot of that skepticism and pushed back that timeline. And I think when we look at, like, if we just take the quotes at face value, being reevaluated or an update in a couple of weeks, like, that has not often been a good thing with the Lakers. So I'm expecting Vando to probably be out until at least mid-November. And then, we'll see in 2 weeks. Maybe there's a positive update. Maybe he's ready to ramp up and get back out there. But based on the Lakers' recent injury history, I'm personally skeptical of that. So those are my 3 takeaways. Again, Dalton Knecht reminds everyone that he's that dude. 80s 3-point progress, and then the updated Jarred Vanderbilt timeline. So let's get into the Q&A portion from tonight's game. So going back to Shibugin, at what point do we start the JHS discussion? We could have it right now. So JHS played 22 minutes, 1 for 9, 1 for 4, 3 points, 1 rebound, 4 assists, 2 turnovers, 2 fouls, was a plus 12 because he was out there during the portion of the game where Dalton went off. I mean, he was out there during that stretch, late fourth into overtime. So he was more, in my opinion, a benefit of who he was playing with. Now, I will say, in a positive sense, I've liked JHS. I felt kind of ramped it up defensively tonight and was pressuring a bit more aggressively, and what was getting into ball handlers a bit more. So that's been, like, after the Quincy Oliveri game, just seeing the way that he defended the Bucks ball handlers versus the way that JHS and even Bronny defend, like, that was a notable gap in between the ball pressure and just the disruption and the aggression and the energy and the effort. And, like, Quincy Oliveri flipped that game single-handedly, and we've yet to really see that type of defensive impact from JHS or from Bronny, just to be fair to kind of mention both of the third string or fourth string point guards. So with JHS, like, I just think he's a ways away. And it seems like the Milwaukee game was more of, or not the Milwaukee game, the Minnesota game, the preseason opener was more fool's gold than anything. Like, he's flashed some progress, but 1 for 9, 1 for 4 on threes. Like, I just don't love his shot selection. I don't love the ability to shot create. I don't love the ability to get downhill and finish. And he just does not look close to being an NBA player right now. Like, I think with him, Bronny, and Maxwell, those 3 guys just don't look like they're ready to play rotation minutes, even in a night like tonight when LeBron and Rui are out. So that's been my concern with this roster, was you had the minimum guys opt in with Jackson, Christian, and Cam, and then you have these end of the bench young guys who I don't think personally are ready for rotation minutes. So you're relying on like a lot of minimum like fringe NBA guys potentially if you suffer an injury, obviously to LeBron or AD, but even to an Austin or a D'Lo, a Max, a Rui, a Vando. Like all of a sudden, the way the rotation works, you're potentially thrusting one of those guys into it and relying on players that just aren't really ready to contribute. And I think there's a stark contrast between seeing the Warriors not have DeAnthony Melton and Brandon Pajemski and still be able to rotate all these NBA caliber solid rotation players in, and the Lakers are like, struggling to get to like 9 guys or 10 guys that they could reliably rely on. So that's like the kind of bigger picture thing for me is like, yes, we can focus on JHS. Like, I mean, the pick has not aged well, especially looking at the guys that went after him with Pajemski and Jaime Jaquez and Cam Whitmore. Like all those, if the Lakers could go back, they would obviously take one of those 3 guys, and that would have been the correct pick. But I think, there's no point in crying over spilt milk. The JHS situation is what it is. I think now it's about trying to figure out what can he do, what is his potential. On that front, it's not been very promising, if we're just calling it what it is. Like there's not been a lot to be encouraged by with JHS. I will say, I think his defensive effort has increased, and I think I've liked some of the stuff I've seen from him defensively, but he's not out there to be a defender ultimately, and the shot's just not there. I don't really like some of the decision making offensively, and I think it looks like this is going to be another G League heavy season for him. And if the Lakers need to call up one of the back end guys, it's going to have to be Cam Reddish, who, again, I think he's very flawed and comes with a lot of concerns in terms of him being a rotation caliber guy, but he's still much better than a JHS, right now. So, yeah, I mean, the JHS conversation, I don't think it's quite time to fully write him off, especially based on how he played in the G League to end the season. Those last like 10, 15 G League games, he did have some really good games and did have some really good moments, but it's like there's a difference between the G League and the NBA. Some guys play really well in the G League, and when the bright lights are on them in the NBA, or when they try to make that transition, they just can't do it. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you to an extent where like I'm not going to mince words. Like JHS does not look good, and so far he does not look like an NBA player. Like he looks like a very fringe NBA player. So whether he ever improves or upgrades from that remains to be seen. But he's also it's year 2. Like he's coming off back surgery. That there's a lot of factors working against him. He's on a team that has a lot of ball handlers, has a lot of shot creators. So his skill set isn't even necessarily used. So if I'm the Lakers, honestly, I'm probably looking to try and include him in some of these potential deals down the road come January or February. Looking at, if they're quibbling over picks or pick swaps or whatever, like I'm trying to use JHS as bait in one of those deals. And I just don't know really how much trade value he has right now. All right, let's get into some of question or comment from Jackson Matisic. JHS will be better on a team like Brooklyn who needs guards to develop. Yeah, I agree. He needs to probably be in a rebuilding situation where he can be like a backup guard and get those like 15 to 18 minutes and just let it fly and like not think about it. With the Lakers, it's like he's coming in and replacing D'Lo or Gabe, and those minutes are so high stakes because it's just preseason, but like this really matters. Like he's fighting those guys or competing with those guys for minutes. He's competing with Bronny for minutes. He's competing with Maxwell Lewis for minutes. He's competing with Cam Reddish for minutes. Like there's only so many backcourt and guard minutes for the Lakers. So every minute and moment matters. And I think so far, again, he's not really lived up to his potential or like the preseason buzz. There was a lot of training camp buzz. It materialized in the first game, but that was also LeBron and AD were out. The Lakers were playing Minnesota's 3rd, 4th string guys, and like it just hasn't really translated since then. Okay, let's see. Ryan Rich, any update on Christian Wood? I've not heard an update on Christian Wood. Again, Lakers injury stuff tends to be pretty quiet and close to the vest. So I'm still operating under the assumption he'll be back sometime in early November. That seems to be the way things are trending. But the second I have an update, I will report it, and you guys will hear it on here. Legoat James, have you heard the latest on the Nick Richards trade front? No, not much on. I know it's someone that the Lakers have been, have had interest in. He makes sense. I don't think I would give up a first round pick for him, but if the price is a second round pick or even a couple of seconds, that is something that I would be interested in if I'm the Lakers. And he's not making that much money, so also salary matching isn't too much of a concern. So I see Bagsky here saying JHS and Lewis for Nick Richards. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if Charlotte does that necessarily, but yeah, I mean, and then Doggy saying now people are going to be asking for Dalton in a trade. Like, yeah, but I don't expect, I've said this in the past, I think it was a previous mailbag, but I don't expect Dalton to be included in a trade based on the Lakers' recent trade history of wanting to keep guys like Austin and Max out of trade talks. I expect Dalton will be one of those guys, and that's also why I said in my mailbag today, if I had to bet on one player to be a Laker, or one current Laker to be a Laker 5 years from now, I would bet on Dalton Knecht being that guy. And tonight to me was just further confirmation of that. Cormac Carl Christie Jr., what's a realistic timeline for Vando playing in an NBA game? I would say mid-November is probably on the early side. Again, an update in 2 weeks does not mean like that. That probably means he's ready to ramp up in 2 weeks on the optimistic side. So again, this is a fluid situation, and who knows, maybe he beats expectations. But again, I want to temper expectations just because based on Gabe Vincent and Kendrick Nunn and Vando last year and Christian Wood last year, and like I could go on and on and on with all the Laker injuries that have ended up being longer timelines than initially expected. So I think it's better to err on the side of caution. And for me, I guess tentatively, I would say like mid-November is like probably a more optimistic, realistic timeline, but it's fluid. So I don't want to say something that and then he's out until December or January. Like let's give it some time. Let's see. Dark Galaxy, Jovan, who are you expecting to play tomorrow? Hoping starters and AR/DK rest. It's a good question. I haven't seen JJ's full comments, so I don't know if he's commented on this, so I don't want to say something that's outdated. I feel like AD and looking at it, AD and D'Lo, maybe I could see resting just because those guys played 30-plus minutes and it's about to be a back-to-back. Like maybe they get their dress rehearsal tomorrow against Golden State. It is a game on ESPN2. That stuff tends to matter in terms of availability, even though it is just the preseason. I do expect LeBron to play tomorrow. I do expect Rui to play tomorrow. As for some of the guys on the minutes restriction, maybe one of those guys ends up resting. I could see maybe AD or D'Lo resting. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice. Like that was the other disappointment of if the Lakers had lost this game, I was going to lead with the disappointment of not getting the dress rehearsal. Like I do think it matters. And I've talked about this on here and in one of my mailbags that like, if you look at the Lakers' recent preseason struggles, it has translated into the beginning of the season where they often get off to these sub 500 starts after a 1-5, 2-4, 0-6 preseason. So now they're 2-3 with a chance to go 3-3. And I think if they can win tomorrow, some of that momentum will translate into the start of the season. It's not the biggest deal in the world, and they have not really had their full rotation yet for more than 2.5 quarters. So I don't want to overreact in either direction, but I do think it matters. And I think, especially with this group, we've seen trends of if they don't have a good preseason, they tend to not have a good start to the season and then have to make up ground in January, February, March, etc. So I think for the Lakers, it's important to close strong. If it were up to me, I think they just play the starters, even if it's just a half or like a quarter and a half let's just get 18 minutes with the projected rotation and then sit everybody and like see what that looks like. Also, get your lick back against Golden State because they just kicked your ass in Las Vegas, and I think it's time to kind of just reassert yourself as this is a team that is in your corner. It's a team that's probably going to be battling with the Lakers for that 5, 6, 7, 8 range in the West, and the difference between being a play-in team versus a playoff team. So I think Lakers-Warriors matchups are going to matter. And if I'm the Lakers, I try and get back at least, maybe not win the game if you're resting your guys, but at least win the first quarter and a half with your normal guys after the way that Golden State played them in Vegas. Dark Galaxy, what do you think of Max subbing in for D'Lo AR instead of LeBron? Probably won't happen though. So I talked about this in my mailbag. If you guys have not checked out episode 59 of Buha's block, please do so after this stream. So I touched on, I was asked a question about AR and D'Lo as a backcourt and how viable it is. And the short of it is, in the regular season, I think it works. I think that's a backcourt that you can win high 40s or even low 50s with those two as the starting backcourt, your foundation for beginning of the first, beginning of the third, even closing in certain lineups. I think we've seen it with Vando as the fifth starter in 2023 and with Rui as the fifth starter in 2024. The Lakers won at a mid-50s pace with that starting group around LeBron and AD. So I think they can do it with those two in the backcourt. The problem becomes in the playoffs where you play teams that can attack you defensively, that will scheme for Austin and D'Lo's defensive limitations. And then in D'Lo's case, he has a very checkered playoff history. And I've already gone over the numbers between the two, but Austin scores more, assist-wise, they're basically tied. But if you look at the percentages, both in terms of field goal percentage and three-point percentage, Austin is around 10% better than D'Lo in both categories. So it's been a rough postseason go for D'Lo the last couple of years, and that's where my concerns really are. Of like, I think there's just a limitation there to how good you can be if those two are your starting backcourt. So for me, I think with the way that the Lakers have restructured the offensive hierarchy and really restructured the offense, I think if I had to split them up, I think the easiest thing to do is just trade D'Lo, most likely by the trade deadline or sometime in January. But if you're not going to do that, if you're going to stick with them, I personally think the move is to move D'Lo to the bench, make him the sixth man, start Max, and then have D'Lo just unleashed with the second unit of, you're going to play 25 to 28 minutes, mostly off the bench, but mostly not with the starters. And for those 25 to 28 minutes, we want you being aggressive, playing confidently, shooting as much as you want, and running a lot of two-man actions with AD. Just because I think if it was a little bit easier to move Austin to the bench with the way the Lakers previously ran their offense, but they are using Austin more as a primary ball handler and more as a playmaker and more as a facilitator. And if you look at the usage percentage, Austin last year was below D'Lo by 2%. So far this preseason, it's been actually Austin ahead of D'Lo. So I think if you're going to have Austin running the offense more and playing more point guard, it makes more sense to split them up and have D'Lo come off the bench and then do that off of the bench. So I don't think it's going to happen, to be clear. I think they're going to continue to stick with Austin and D'Lo, and it's not going to be Max or Gabe starting. But if I had to split them up and move on to the bench, to me, and also it just makes it easier if you trade D'Lo in January or February. All of a sudden, you're not making as much of a change to your starting lineup or how you're playing with the starters. You already have Austin in there, and it's a smoother transition. Whereas if you have Austin as your sixth man, then you trade D'Lo, now all of a sudden you promote Austin. Now you have to adjust things again, and it's a small adjustment, but I think every adjustment matters. You want continuity with your starting lineup. So in theory, maybe you're subbing someone in for Rui in the starting lineup, and you're acquiring a wing, and that guy is replacing Rui, but like you still have the Max Austin backcourt or the Gabe Austin backcourt. So for me, I personally, because I think they're shifting more of the offensive responsibility to Austin, and Austin is the guy more likely to be there past the trade deadline and even into next season, I would favor keeping Austin in the starting lineup, keeping his role as similar as possible, and then moving D'Lo to the bench. But I know some people think the opposite, especially with Austin's success last season coming off the bench. I get it. I just think, again, who's the guy? I mean, who's the guy you trust more in come playoff time? Who's the guy that the Lakers have seemingly trusted more to start the season? And who's the guy more likely to be on the Lakers past the trade deadline? All those answers point to Austin. So for me, I would keep Austin as a starter, move D'Lo to the bench. Let's see. Pugzilla, saw your episode earlier and just want to greet a happy birthday to you, brother. Cheers. Thank you. So yes, today is my birthday. I got about an hour and 10 minutes left. I'm 32. It's my Magic Johnson year. I feel old. It feels weird being 32, but I'm gonna ride the wave and hope that this is how I love to I'm glad to be spending my birthday with all of you, and so I appreciate it, Pugzilla. Fee, happy birthday, fam. Abdul Hakim Umar, happy birthday, Jovan. Appreciate you guys. Let's do Barath Ram. What did you think about what did you think about the second quarter when Phoenix outscored LA by 10? What did you think about our offense and defense with our mostly regulars? So I thought the offensive organization was good for the most part. I thought that especially in the first quarter, I liked a lot of what the Lakers were running, and it's felt like that's kind of been a trend where the Lakers, and I think Kranjis has tracked this well with his offensive organization percentages by quarter, which if you follow Kranjis basketball on Twitter, he's tweeting about all this stuff, and they typically start strongest in the first quarter, and then they progressively tail off, and maybe there's a jump again in the third quarter because they're going back to the starters. And then, so it's really been more so with the starters that there's been some more offensive organization. Now, I would say, so I thought the offense was fine. Like if you're down LeBron and Rui, you're down your number 1 or number 2 option, and then your number 5 option. So there's going to be an offensive hit in terms of shot making, shot creation, and just this was a team in particular with Rui that he's going to have Devin Booker or Bradley Beal defending him in this matchup, which is a mismatch. And that's a mismatch that Rui can go to the offensive glass. He could go to the post. He could get those deep seals that he punishes guards with. So I think this is a really good matchup for Rui offensively. And I think the Lakers missed Rui and his ability to going from Rui to Cam Reddish or even to Max Christie from a physicality and size perspective is a decent drop off, especially offensively, with the way that Rui plays versus the way that those two guys play. So I thought the Lakers really missed Rui in that regard. Obviously, you're missing LeBron. They just play differently without LeBron. Yes, there's more ball movement and there's a more egalitarian offensive style, but LeBron is LeBron. And at any point, he could put his head down, get to the rim, draw a foul, make that step back 3, attack in transition. LeBron is LeBron. So I think the Lakers miss LeBron whenever they don't have him. I know they've had some recent success over the past season, but let's not get it twisted. When the Lakers don't have LeBron, it's a big loss. So I say all that to say, offensively, I expected them. The shot making was not going to be quite what it was with the regulars. Now, defensively, this is a tough matchup for them because the Suns have 2 elite perimeter scorers and 1 good one in Bradley Beal. I'll still classify him as a good one. I will not classify him as a great one. I will not classify him as an elite one. That contract is insane, but Bradley Beal is still a solid shot maker and still a guy that could get you 20, 25 on a given night. So I don't want to disrespect Bradley Beal, but he's obviously taken a couple steps back. He's no longer at that all-star level production. So Phoenix has the offensive talent to exploit the Lakers' lack of foot speed, the Lakers' lack of perimeter defense. So I think missing Rui and LeBron in this matchup and 2 bigger wings who give the Lakers at least some type of physical advantage over Phoenix, I think that really hurt. So we did see more Cam Reddish, and I thought he had some good moments against KD. To me, he still struggles with both on and off ball screen navigation. So if he's guarding KD and Yusuf Nurkic comes to screen for KD, in my opinion, Cam really struggles getting around that screen. He'll often get hit by the screen and then have this like momentary setback in terms of recovering. And then that's all KD really needs to create space. And then off the ball, if Yusuf Nurkic is setting a pin down for KD, Cam struggles to navigate that. So for like, in terms of just like on ball, but when he is in isolation, I like Cam, but when he's having to navigate a screen or some type of decoy action that gets the offensive player some separation, that's where I think Cam kind of struggles. And then you'll see him foul guys, or you'll see him just kind of give up a semi-contested jumper. So I think like on one hand, there was more Cam and more Max, which probably helped the perimeter defense in some regards. But I think just not having the size and the rebounding of LeBron and Rui and just playing smaller in general, it probably hurt the Lakers defense a bit. So I think defensively, there was a lineup where it was like D'Lo late in the game, D'Lo, JHS, and Bronny, and Dalton, and I was just like, how are you supposed to really defend an NBA offense like with that group out there? And AD was the fifth guy, but like still, it's like the Lakers just have some relatively limited defensive personnel. So I would just say like the defense could always be better. I think the defense right now is my biggest concern. Of like I still view the Lakers as a below league average defense as currently constructed, especially with Vando out. And that to me is like the concern is just the offense to me is top 10 and has the potential to be top 5. But if the defense is like 16th versus being like 23rd, that's a pretty big difference in terms of how good the Lakers will actually be. Barath Ram, thoughts on D'Lo? Did not have a good shooting game, but did provide 10 assists. LA also has been consistently shooting about 43s these preseason games. Do you think these looks are forced or not? So I'll answer the second question first. I think they are a little forced. So LA has hit 40 plus threes in 4 of the 5 games now, and that's clearly by design. And looking at tonight, so 80 went 4 for 9. Cam 0 for 4, D'Lo 0 for 5, Austin 1 for 4, Max 1 for 2, Gabe 1 for 4. I'm going to skip a couple guys. JHS 1 for 4, and then Dalton 8 for 13. So in terms of like high usage or rather like high volume 3-point shooting, it was primarily AD, D'Lo, and Dalton, which 2 of those guys you want shooting a lot, right? Like Dalton and D'Lo, you want taking a lot of threes. AD 9 threes is a little rich for me, but he did hit 4 of them, so he had to go and like take the threes. But D'Lo going 0 for 5. Like D'Lo to me now has had a couple of these games back to back. I thought the Golden State game was worse, but he had moments where he's just kind of going through the motions and playing with a preseason style or preseason level, effort level. And so tonight, 10 assists. It was part of that fourth quarter kind of comeback or keeping the Lakers in it, but did have 3 turnovers and had them relatively early. I want to say by the time he had like 5 or 6 assists, he already had 3 turnovers. So he did clean that up later in the game. But to me, like they were like pretty just, throwing the ball out of bounds, dribbling the ball off his foot, like that type of stuff that, you just don't, it's not really characteristic of D'Lo, or it's more characteristic of D'Lo when he's at his worst and when he's kind of checked out or just not fully engaged. And like, that's always to me the difference between, and it always kind of ends up being a D'Lo Austin conversation. But like Austin, to me, even when he's not making shots, he's always engaged defensively. He's like, to me, Austin never looks just like disengaged with what's going on either end of the floor. He might make mistakes, he might take bad shots, he might not make shots, and he might get beat backdoor or whatever. But like he's always engaged in at least trying. Where sometimes D'Lo just to me comes off as not really caring. Now I will say, I think his defensive effort has been solid in the preseason. I think he's had some good moments defensively and has largely tried, at least on the ball. Off the ball, he'll get beat and get beat backdoor or get beat for rebounds or whatever. And then tonight, again, as you said, 10 assists. Like I thought he actually took on more of the playmaking role. Austin was more of the scorer tonight. So Austin, 18 points, 6 of 12 shooting, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. He's continued to get to the free throw line well. D'Lo actually got to the free throw line 5 for 5. That was where he got over half his points were at the free throw line. So he had actually not attempted a free throw until tonight. So that was a positive for D'Lo as well. But yeah, sometimes it just looks like he's just going through the motions. He'll take like a semi-contested fadeaway three, and he's just kind of jogging back. And like, and Austin's talked about this too. Like, it's just, I guess, partly just the way D'Lo plays, his body language, his style, like that just is who he is. But when he's not making shots and he's not making plays, it looks really bad because he's just going at his own pace. And a lot of times it's a slow pace. And so it kind of looks like he just doesn't care out there. But obviously we know he cares. It's just like sometimes I think he needs to be a bit more engaged and at least look like he's trying more than he is. And if it is a body language thing, then I think he needs to work on his body language, because a lot of times it just looks like he's floating. And when he's making shots and he's doing the ice in the veins and like the crowd's going wild, it looks cool. But when he's not, then it looks like a dude who's going 2 for 9 and not making a three. Let's see. Laker Dan 24. Can Dalton give us 15 points per game off the bench this year? Can he? Yes. Will he? I don't think so. I don't know if he's going to play enough because, again, reminder, like LeBron and Rui were out for this game. So if we're looking at the 9-man rotation, it's the 5 starters with Gabe, Max, Jackson, and Dalton off the bench. And Dalton's actually been the 9th guy. Like if we look at, and I am going to at some point next week do a rotation episode where I go through my projected rotation. Like Dalton has been the 9th guy up to this point. And you know, more often than not, he has played, like, he's been the guy playing deep into garbage time. He's been the guy playing with the 3rd and 4th string guys. And the Lakers have kind of made it clear like who their top 8 are. Now, does this performance change that? Maybe. I also look at a guy like Quincy Oliveri, who I felt like should have gotten at least a shot last game to play with some of the rotation guys and didn't, after the performance he had. So like, obviously Dalton's a roster player. It's a different situation. He's a 1st-round pick. So like the expectations and the way the Lakers are going to handle him is different than a guy like Quincy Oliveri. But I'm just, it was more so to illustrate, like, I don't necessarily know if this performance guarantees Dalton a bigger role. Obviously, if he's making 8 threes and shooting over 50%, like, he's going to have a sizable role, and he's going to only increase his role progressively throughout the season. But I still would pencil him in as the 9th guy tentatively. Could he pass Gabe or Max or Jackson if he continues to shoot like this? Like, yes, obviously, I think he will. And he has the upside to be the Lakers 6th man for sure. But right now, I'd still slot him as the 9th guy. But when Vando comes back, it's going to be interesting to see if JJ expands things to 10 guys or if maybe someone else gets subbed out. Because, like, these types of nights from Dalton are the types of nights that, like, the Lakers are gonna need, especially if a LeBron is out or AD or D'Lo, Austin, whoever. One of those guys misses, they're gonna need someone to step up. And between Max, Gabe, Jackson, and Dalton, who do you have the most confidence in stepping up and dropping 12, 15, 18 points? It's Dalton, and I don't think it's close. So certainly has the potential to do that. I just think as things are currently constructed, with the health of the roster and with the offensive firepower, because the Lakers have, like, those 5 starters can all drop. We saw it last year. They had a game where they dropped 20 points each. First time since 1993 a starting lineup has done that. Like, the Lakers have a lot of offensive firepower. I feel like people don't look at them that way. This is a really, really good offensive team with a lot of scoring weapons, a lot of shooting weapons, and Dalton fits in with that. It might be their best bench option, but I think 15 is a little high. If you say 12, you could talk me into 12. And maybe he has a stretch where he averages 15, but 15 is high for the course of the season. So for now, I would probably put it closer to like 10 to 12, but I think it's certainly possible. I just think someone either has to get injured or he really has to be elevated within the rotation. And as of right now, I want to see it first before I make that proclamation. Dark Galaxy, Jovan, if Lonzo stays healthy, would you trade D'Lo for him? As of right now, no. Like the theoretical version of Lonzo, sure, but we got to see him. Like, I think he's still a ways away from getting back to the player that he was. And there's also obviously the health element of, like, can he stay healthy over the course of a season? Does he have to be load managed? Can he play back-to-backs? Is he on a minutes restriction? Like, I think there's still a lot of questions there with Lonzo. Obviously, it's a great story. It's a heartwarming story. For me personally, I covered Lonzo at UCLA and entering the league that first year at the Lakers. I've been to the Ball House in Chino Hills, the OG house, not the new one. So like I was at ESPN at the time, and I was doing a lot of social content with the Ball family and hanging out with LeVar, and he's made me breakfast before. And like, so I had like a front row view to the Ball family and the rise of Lonzo, the rise of Triple Bs. So like on a personal level, like I think it's a great story. I'm very happy for Lonzo, and it's amazing that he's back and playing. But like in theory, the version of Lonzo we saw before the injury, like that guy is a really good player. He's a good two-way player. And I think he could help the Lakers and help the Bulls. He could help basically any team. It's just a matter of like, can he get back to being that player? How long does it take him to get back to being that player? And then once he's there, what are the physical limitations? What are the physical restrictions in terms of minutes, workload? Because like if you're trading D'Lo, you need to be getting back a starting level player who's a big part of your rotation. I don't think you just trade D'Lo willy-nilly and take a risk on a guy who might not be able to play a certain amount of times or might not be able to hold up through the course of the season. So I think you have to be really intentional about using that bullet, the D'Lo bullet, and I don't know if Lonzo's the guy. Now, if you're talking about like a Gabe Vincent, and I don't know Lonzo's contract off the top of my head, so if you're talking about like maybe some of the lower bench guys and cobbling that together to get Alonzo, and maybe you do a separate D'Lo trade, I'm more open to that. But D'Lo specifically, for as critical as I can be about D'Lo, I do recognize his value to this team, and I don't think I would do that as of right now. Now, if Lonzo looks great and there's no restrictions and he's fully back, and again, if Lakers make a trade, it's almost certainly going to be in January or closer to the trade deadline. So we still got a couple months here. So I would like to see what Lonzo looks like the next couple months and then go from there. All right, I'm going to go about 5 more minutes here. I promised my wife I would only go about 30 minutes. And as always, I went a little longer. Yes, I'm seeing people agreeing about Lonzo. 760 Cobra, do you think Bronny can become a Patrick Beverly type player? That's, I think, frankly, like his upside. The one difference between a Pat Beverly and even a Davion Mitchell, who I think is probably a more realistic comparison, is like those dudes just have that dog in them, and it's hard to quantify. It's hard to explain. But like Pat Beverly, for all his flaws, and he's not my favorite person or favorite player by any means. I'll leave it at that. He like, this was a dude who, I mean, even the Russell Westbrook, like when he injured Russ in the beginning of their beef, like that was Pat hounding 94 feet. Like there's a reason why he has the nickname Mr. 94 feet. Now, I don't think he's the caliber defender that he used to be, and his defense has slipped, and he no longer does some of those things. And he kind of became more of like a caricature of himself, or like a WWE type figure over the last few years. But like Houston Rockets, early Clippers, Pat Bev, like that was a guy who was pressuring 94 feet, defending an opponent's best player, and like getting in their head, playing these games with them. And I covered the playoff series of Clippers Warriors, where he was defending KD and like actually was bothering, like for as much as you could realistically bother KD, Pat Bev was doing that. Obviously KD, like, and he eventually got pissed off and dropped 50 on the Clippers one game. Like, so it can backfire for sure. And the antics, Bronny will never have the Pat Bev antics. And that's not even what I'm talking about, but like just that mentality of I'm pressuring you 94 feet. I'm going to pick up a foul. I'm going to poke you. I'm going to prod you. Like just that dog, that fight. I've yet to really see that from Bronny. So I think that's the next step for him. Like even Quincy Oliveri, like I thought he had that in that 9-minute stretch against the Bucks. So like I like to see that from Bronny and from JHS more. So if you're talking like purely skill set, that like Avery Bradley, Pat Beverly Davion Mitchell like archetype, and that's kind of a wide range of players there. But like that archetype, yes, I see that in the upside of Bronny, but he's clearly a ways away from, like a year or two away from even sniffing like that archetype. But that's like in theory, could he be a like secondary ball handler who's a spot up guy, a transition guy, and then also a defensive pest? Like that's how what he profiles as. He's still a ways away from that. Dark Galaxy, are you traveling to SF? Yes, that's why I have to end this stream soon, because I still got to write. I got to pack. I got to get up, fly to SF. So Laker Dan, 24. Jovan DC, Anthony Davis's 3-point attempts becoming a big part of our new offense. Not a big part, but a bigger part. So I guess we're dealing with semantics there. I think AD, the way things are looking, is probably going to average 3 to 5 3-point attempts. So now, ideally, that is just more of an increase just in terms of overall attempts for AD, and it's not coming at the expense of post-ups or ISOs or like shots around the rim. Maybe it comes at the expense of some of the mid-range jumpers, and I'd personally be okay with that, especially if it's a lot of pick and pop, catch and shoot style threes. It's not just him forcing them up to try and just hit a certain number. So I think it's going to become a bigger part of the offense. Will it ever be a big part? No. I think a night like tonight, he got hot. He attempted 9 threes. I don't expect that to be the norm. I expect him to be more in like the 3 to 5 3-point attempt range on a nightly basis, and probably more so like if I had to put like 3.7 attempts per game or 4.2, something like that, probably ends up being the number rather than 8 or 9. So I don't think it's ever going to be a big part of the offense, but certainly bigger than it has been in previous seasons, especially if he shoots it like this. Mr. T, Bronny would need to hustle more, in my opinion. That's basically what I'm getting at. Just that hustle, that kind of like burning like energy and effort, and just that like desire that I feel like he's exhibited it at times, but I think it's again, like dog is probably the like, you just know when you say someone has that dog in them, like, you know, you're talking about. So that's it. Thoughts on AR, DK, Max, LBJ, AD lineup? I like it. I like that a lot. It's a big lineup, so you're going with 5 guys, 6'5" and above. You can theoretically switch. I mean, the Lakers already switched 1 through 4, but you can easily switch 1 through 4. But you could even switch 1 to 5 or like 2 to 5, depending on the matchups and the opponent. So I like that lineup a lot. Like I've been a fan of any AR Max backcourt, and technically I would say Dalton's more like the 3 in this lineup than Max is. It really depends though on the opponent, defensive matchups, etc. And a lot of it's just semantics in terms of like 2 versus 3. But I like this lineup. You have shooting around LeBron, AD, and Austin, and then defensively, obviously you have size. You have got like, I think Dalton's still a relative liability right now, and Austin could be a liability depending on the matchup. But you got like, I've been impressed with Dalton's rebounding. Obviously Max is a good rebounder. He's the Lakers' best rebounder statistically under 6'8". So I like that. This is a good one. The Orange Army, what type of player does Knecht remind you of? Can he keep this momentum into the regular season? I think he can keep the momentum. I don't like, he's not like 8 threes, 35 points. I want to temper expectations with that. This is a special night, and I would not be surprised if 35 points is the most points Dalton Knecht scores in a game this season. And that's not a knock on Dalton. That's just the reality of LeBron and AD are always in the top 15 in scoring. Like those 2 guys are going to average 24, 25 plus points. Austin's going to be in the 16 to 18 point range. D'Lo is probably going to be in a similar range. Rui's going to be averaging 14, 15 points a night. So at best, I look at Dalton as like the 6th option. And there's just kind of a limitation there in terms of now if he just, again though, I mean the shots he was hitting in the 4th quarter and overtime, like if he's hitting those shots, he is capable of going off for like 20 on any given night. Just 35 is pretty high, and 8 threes, that's a lot. So maybe I'm wrong, and I think it's a good thing for the Lakers if I'm wrong here. But I would say momentum, yes, in terms of like confidence and just momentum within the offense. I don't want to like say he's going to come out opening night and drop 35 or even drop 20 necessarily. Now, what type of player does he remind me of? It's a really good question because he's not like, if you want to compare him to like JJ, for example, he's got way more of a bag than JJ ever had offensively. He's bigger than JJ. He's more athletic than JJ. He almost had that dunk on, I think it was Nurkic that he got fouled on. And like, it's tough. Who do you guys think he reminds you of? Let me know in the chat. It's prime Mike Miller. I feel like, so Mike Miller was a little bit bigger. I think he's more athletic than Mike Miller. It's not a bad example that's probably fair. I almost want to say this is a weird one. Like there is a little bit, it's not a perfect comparison, but there's a little bit of J.R. Smith in his game. And I mean that in a good way. I don't mean the like knuckleheadness or whatever with J.R. Smith, but Zerbiak, Bogdanovic is a good one. That's actually like, he's kind of like a more athletic Bogdanovic, Atlanta, the Atlanta Bogdanovic. So that's a good one. That's one that he's been compared to. I see Zerbiak. I see someone saying MPJ. He could be that type of guy. Like obviously MPJ is 6'10". MPJ is a freak. But you know, like that's, I like that. I would say he's more athletic and a better ball handler than MPJ, but MPJ is one of the best shooters in the league. And I would say at this point, obviously a more consistent offensive threat than Dalton, but Dalton can grow into like, it's in, like, I don't like, yeah. I mean, I think we've come up with Bogdanovic is a good one. I would even say he's more athletic than Bogdanovic, but Bogdanovic is a better ball handler playmaker. So I like that one. I like the Zerbiak one. I see that. JR for me, it's kind of the combination of like, he could dunk on you on one play and then also just launch a 30-footer and like not care and just splash it in and like just get hot. Like I think people remember Cleveland J.R. Smith, but they forget about New Orleans J.R. Smith or Denver J.R. Smith or New York J.R. Smith. And that dude was like, for all of his flaws, was just, he was really athletic and he was a really good and more of a streaky shooter than I think Dalton will be, but like, just that ability to just change a game off the bench. I think Dalton could ultimately have that impact. Seeing no username 12 more athletic than post-injury MPJ. Maybe MPJ can't jump. I feel like he's got more vertical athleticism and not as much horizontal athleticism. I feel like Dalton is more of a vertical athlete as well, but I think he's got a little bit better burst, a little bit better north-south game. And he's also smaller though. So like it's like MPJ's a little stiff because of the back stuff. And like he's very, I'm seeing here, Guillermo Barzana, he's a more athletic Klay Thompson. Well, I see what you mean. He's not the shooter Klay is. Like, I mean, Klay to me is the second best shooter of all time and was just like Dalton. For as good of a shooter as he is, he might be in the top 1%, as JJ said. He's not. Klay's in the top 0.1% or even 0.01%. It's really just him and Steph on that plane. Maybe you could argue Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, a couple guys, but I mean, to me, Klay is right there with the best shooters ever. I think it's premature to put Dalton in that conversation. Now, if we're talking like player archetype, I also think defensively, Klay was at a totally different level. Like he was guarding Kyrie Irving and like, you know, elite level James Harden. Like Dalton is not that type of defender. So now if we're just talking offensively, I see some similarities, but I still think Klay had like the perfect jump shot and he's a 0.01% shooter. So I'm not quite there yet, but I get what you mean. Like a big guard, big shooter, elite shooter. Like I agree with that. And there are some similarities. I'd also say Dalton's more athletic and he's got more of a bag and a better finisher than Klay, but Klay was better shooter, better defender, and just overall, I think that's a big difference. I see what you're saying though with the release. Kevin Herter. Yeah, I mean, I see Kyle Korver, but I would say he's even a better. He's got a better bag, better skill set. But I've already gone past the 5 minutes I said I would go, so I'm going to end the stream right now. I appreciate you all for rocking with me. I think this is one of our biggest streams, and it was nice to be able to go within 30 minutes of the buzzer for a preseason game and have all of you tune in with me. So thank you guys for helping make my birthday special. If you have not done so yet, please check out episode 59 of Buha's Block. I do a mailbag. I touch on Dalton. I touch on Austin. I touch on the backcourt. Touch on Rui. Touch on which Laker I think will be there or which Lakers could be there 5 years from now. And those are the topics off the top of my head, but get into 7 questions. So thank you guys. Thank you for the birthday wishes. And I'll be back tomorrow night for post-game reaction to Lakers Warriors. I will be on the road, so I'm not quite sure yet if I'm going to do a live stream or remote. If my mic's working, I will do a live stream. But thank you guys again so much. Thank you for the questions. Tried to hit on everybody. Again, appreciate seeing the chat right now flooded with the birthday wishes, and I really appreciate it. It means a lot. So thank you guys as always for watching, listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications so you do not miss a video or a live stream the second I drop it. Also, be sure to like and comment on this video. And for those listening, if you are a podcast listener, and you are listening to this most likely early Friday morning, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Thank you guys again. I appreciate you. I will talk to you soon.